So I got the chat box fixed. So if a question comes up, you can just type it in the chat box, or feel free to unmute your microphone and just say what you need to say. We're going to go a little bit fast, but if we need to stop and explain something further, then make a comment or just blurt out your question, unmute your microphone, and we'll address whatever needs to be addressed. I'll probably keep saying this the remaining weeks that we have, but registration is still upon us. Today, new student registration opens. We received a little bit of statistical news this past week, and it appears there is a trend that is, we talked about this a little last week. It appears the possibility of increased registration, admissions, enrollment for this coming fall. We are going forward as if we will all be back together again face to face. I would encourage you to not avoid registration or postpone registration just out of uncertainty whether or not we'll be strictly online or we'll be able to meet face to face. Those of you that are my advisees, we've addressed this. I usually do with everybody face to face each semester. Get yourself in the system, get registered, and we can always make changes. That is easier to do than trying to weasel in a class that's already full, if that makes sense. So get registered, get registered, get registered. We know of, found out yesterday in our staff meeting, several high school students who are matriculating over. They've done the Career Center, and Claire, great. Yeah, if you've already registered, then you can take a nap for the next 30 seconds. But in this class, in Food 2, you'll be moving on to Food 3. A lot of our high school students earned Food 1 and Food 2 credit through the Career Center. So, you know, as I've addressed the last couple of weeks, there will be competition for the limited number of seats and classes that are available. So don't wait, don't hesitate, get registered. Today we're going to talk about breakfast. We're not going to be able to cover everything related to breakfast. We're going to focus on two things. We're really going to focus on one, and that's egg cookery. But your lab assignment is going to have 3 parts for this week, and I'll break all that down as we go. The very end today, just before questions, I'll break down what your practical exam assignment is. I'll review it all in greater detail next week. We'll have a very short Zoom session next Tuesday, but I want to give you the overview of your practical exam, and you can start planning, thinking, researching if you need to, what your practical exam next week will be. And written exam, it's like it was for Food 1, just you'll have the benefit of doing it at home at your leisure during the week of written finals. I'll break that down later. And so let's talk about eggs. This is an egg. All of our reference today will be chicken eggs. So not breaking down or looking closely at quail eggs or duck eggs or ostrich eggs. Just the anatomy of the egg is essentially the same for each one. Sizes are different, so time and temperature will be different. Um, Here's an egg. It's important for you to know that majority of the cholesterol, calories, protein, all of those things is in the yolk. So the health kick of some of the health and nutrition side of our business, focusing on eating primarily egg whites, there's not much to an egg white. Anyway, just keep that in mind. But you don't necessarily have to know all of this detail here. Here is even more detail. The thing that we will focus on more today will be this middle box on the right-hand side, and that's time and temperature. Temperature at which you need to cook eggs, what's going to kill salmonella, and different cooking methods, et cetera, et cetera. An interesting thing, if you haven't had stock soups and sauces yet, you may not have known that egg whites are particularly good at clarifying a stock. If you have had stock soups and sauces, this should be a little bit of review. But if you make a consomme, in the proper execution of the consomme, you build a raft. There's minced meat. There's always egg white in that raft. And that's the solids and the chunks that kind of float to the top and almost solidify as that stock simmers really low. It's the egg white that is clarifying the stock. It's removing any remaining impurities. And so that's good to know. Little magic that happens from the egg white. Salmonella, the condition that you get if you have too much salmonella in you from food that you've consumed is called salmonellosis. And that's from the salmonella bacteria. You have it in your body right now. But if you consume too much and there's no more balance, you have an increase of that bacteria in your body, then you get these symptoms. It can be fatal. Generally, it's not. Kind of like this COVID-19 situation that we're in. It is the most vulnerable of the population. If they get salmonella, this could be a life-threatening situation for most people. The vast majority, you just get really sick. I mean, a holy cow case of the trots. You may have to go to the hospital to have fluids, some IV or whatnot. Some of the things that we do in classical and high-end cuisine leaves us susceptible to this. You may undercook some things. We've talked about varying degrees of doneness of steak, for example, medium and higher, medium well done, are the proper degrees of doneness to kill most all of this bacteria. If you're like me and you want medium rare, in some cases black and blue, then you leave yourself susceptible. You're not at a temperature high enough to kill these bugs. Salmonella is killed at 160 degrees. That's why if you go back to your time and temperature charts, and I don't know what the textbook has, you look up online. Some of our thermometers may come in a case that has, rare or cook this food at this temperature, cook beef at blah, 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 cook pork at blah, blah, blah. Most always you're going to see chicken and turkey being cooked at 160, 165 degrees. that is to ensure that salmonella is killed. You will mostly encounter salmonella on the eggs, on the egg shell. Less, there's less occurrence of it actually from undercooked egg, but much more occurrence on the shell. If the eggs you purchase come from the grocery store, there's actually an outer layer from the raw farmhouse chicken egg. There's an outer layer of shell that has been removed in the steaming process for commercial production. If you buy farm fresh eggs or you raise chickens yourself, you need to be sure that the shell outside your eggs are cleaned thoroughly before you crack them, before you use them. Because whatever's on the outside, if you crack that egg on the side of a bowl, you have transferred salmonella to the bowl and now to everything else that you're mixing. Hope that makes sense. If not, ask a question. We're going to break down and look in a little closer detail. Okay, so this is a very good question, Doug. Does pasteurization remove all of this? So the short answer is no, it doesn't remove all of it. But it removes, and I don't have the statistic in front of me, so don't quote this, it removes 90% or 85% or 72%, whatever that may be. But the vast majority, because, as I said, because the majority of salmonella occurs on the outer shell of the egg, the shell of the egg. In pasteurization, pasteurization is just slowly raising temperature to a certain point and then cooling again. These eggs, the temperature is raised because they're pressure washed under steam. And so it happens quickly, so you don't cook the egg inside. And it removes it. The shell is layered. That's why a farm fresh egg seems so dense, thicker shell. There's an outer shell that is removed while these eggs are pasteurized and cleaned and prepared for cartons and packaging to go to the grocery store. And so the vast majority, if there's salmonella on the outside, it's removed. So any salmonella that would be remaining typically would be salmonella that occurs naturally inside every single egg has salmonella inside of it. You have salmonella inside you. That's part of the gut biome. It's part of the bacteria. It's good bacteria in the right ratio, in the right proportion. It's when that gets out of balance and you consume, and I don't mean eating too many eggs. I mean, while those eggs are held, the food that you eat is not raised to a high enough temperature. Think back to food service sanitation. What happens? Why do we focus on the danger zone? Because everything, bacteria and toxins, these bugs, virus even, in this danger zone, they multiply, they divide quickly at 75 degrees, at 80 degrees, at 100 degrees. And it's not till 35 degrees, 39 degrees, freezing. It's not till 141 degrees, 160 degrees that this bacteria is killed. And so, you're going to make an ice cream custard, which we'll talk about here a little bit later. If you don't handle that really well, you don't handle that properly, the whole time that custard is sitting and waiting, and even in a home ice cream freezer, the churn, that salmonella is in the danger zone, and it's multiplying and it's multiplying and it's dividing and it's multiplying. And you have this delicious bowl of vanilla bean ice cream, and roughly 2 to 3 days later, you end up with your eyeballs and eyelashes trying to go through your exhaust pipe. That's what happens. And so in that pasteurization process, the outside is taken care of, is removed. A lot of the inside still remains. Hope that answers the question. Outside of the safety time and temperature, I like this little look at what happens to your egg at varying temperatures. And you can see here, if you're a sunny side up, if you are a soft egg, whether that's a fried egg, poached egg, boiled egg, if you're a soft egg enjoyer, keep in mind it's 160 degrees to kill salmonella. Look at these temperatures. I mean, to have really soft, runny yolk, but a fully cooked egg white, you know, look at that. You're 144, 146 degrees. You haven't killed the salmonella yet. And so if that's how you like to eat your eggs and you're using farm fresh eggs, I'm not saying farm fresh eggs are bad. I'm just saying, just like your hands and the virus that we're facing right now, cleanliness, wash your hands all the time, wash those eggs. That's all you have to do. Okay. We're going to break down most of these different cooking methods, be in different order, but we'll talk about. So I like this slide because it basically breaks down the cooking methods into 3 basic methods: baking, sauteing, pan frying. Okay, fried egg. A basted egg really is just a fried egg. We're not going to talk about that very much. Sauteing, scrambled and omelet. Frittata really falls in the omelet category, and it does. The difference between an omelet, folded omelet, French omelet, which is a little thinner, almost crepe-like, and it's more rolled or fold in thirds. That's a French omelet. And scrambled. The difference between an omelet and a frittata is the filling of an omelet is stuffed inside, whether in that French omelet roll or the folded in half in the American style restaurant, hotel brunch, omelet bar style of omelet. Frittata is open, can be done in the pan, stovetop, can also be started stovetop and then finished in the oven. Now, Keith will talk about shired eggs and what that means if you're not familiar with that term. So this is, I think this date was fairly recent, last year. And a survey of how Americans like to eat their eggs. So let's do a little bit of this survey as well. Whether these options here, however you like to eat your eggs, type in the chat box, every one of you. I would like to see how it is that you like your eggs. Do you like scrambled? Do you like them fried, sunny side up, over easy, medium? Do you like boiled eggs? Do you like just deviled eggs, which is boiled egg? Let's leave that one out. Do you like a quiche? Do you like, tell me what you like. Take a minute and type it in the chat box. All right, there's a few of you. Tater salad. Anytime I hear that, I think of Ron White, uh, comedian. Yeah, they call me. And my son, Tater Tot. Good. All right. A lot of scrambled. Well, it looks like this class, yeah, his son is Tater Tot. I'm a little like Claire here. I like just about all of it. I grew up with over easy, um, fried right on top of toast or stuffed in the middle of two pancakes, and the yolk goes everywhere. I used to sop up the plate with toast and the richness of the yolk. And I don't know why I don't care for that anymore. I'm a scrambled. I'm a omelet. I'm a quiche. Um, our problem here is eggs don't like me very much, and we'll leave that alone. Um, okay, Zachary, you either I don't know what a cowboy quiche is. What is that? Is that a ha ha, or is that really something? Have you stumped me? Okay, we'll move on. Let's talk about scrambled. Um, if you have not, if you have never scrambled an egg, you can raise your hand. But scrambled egg is simply crack the eggs in a side bowl, whip those eggs. Now there are a variety of recipes. Some call for a little water um, that makes a little more frothy. Some call for a little bit of milk or a little bit of cream. I find that especially you need to keep this in mind. Okay, regular cowboy quiche. Got it. Um, when you add additional liquid, especially if you ever find yourself in volume cooking, um, you're going to be using steam table, the hotel pans, um, for a buffet type service, for large settings where you're serving a serving line. Holding eggs for a longer period of time, especially under steam, continues to cook them, but you release a lot more liquid. And so you end up with a bunch of water and those eggs. And I'm not talking soft scrambled, I'm just talking wet. And there's a difference in the two. So I prefer scrambled eggs as just the egg, and I leave the milk and the cream and the water out. That's true for baking, using those things to either stretch eggs or uh, almond milk making. That's interesting, Abby. I don't use almond milk, so um, that is an interesting technique, Doug, and it is a technique that some do. I don't personally think it really is all that necessary for scrambled eggs. There are a variety of omelets that, even a 3 or 4 egg omelet is really thick, and that's whipping the egg whites and then mixing the egg yolks and folding the two, and using that for your omelet base. Um, I don't know. It's the finished texture that you want to achieve. We're going to repeat this statement here a little bit later, but the thing about eggs is experiment, experiment, experiment. And they're so inexpensive. You can buy a couple dozen eggs and, well, these two eggs try it this way and these two eggs try that. And you could spend a whole day cooking eggs different ways. But it's the movement in the pan that's going to get the scramble. Now, whether you knew this or not, we've talked a lot in this class about carryover cooking in different contexts. With scrambled eggs especially, I need you to keep in mind carryover cooking and less about carryover cooking of the eggs themselves. They lose temperature so fast, but the temperature of the pan. You don't want to cook the eggs all the way to the degree of doneness that you prefer. You want to hold back a little bit because even in just 15, 20, 30 seconds, the heat of the pan continues to cook the eggs. And so a scrambled egg is something, unless you remove it from the pan immediately, they will continue to cook in the pan for at least a minute or so, a minute or two. And so you think of it just like we've talked about steaks and other proteins. That when you sear, when you grill, you grill or you sear or you pan fry or you roast to a degree of doneness less than what you actually want to eat, so that you allow for that added heat that's going to remain when you pull the steak off the grill. When you turn the fire off under your saute pan, when you scramble your eggs, a degree of doneness less, so that you don't overcook the eggs. Okay. We'll breeze through this. American style scrambled eggs. This is a little bit hard to see. The beauty of eggs, Claire, is they cook so fast. Maybe that's where IHOP and Waffle House and Denny's, made their business, because it's really quick and easy. If the whole family likes their eggs a little bit different, everybody can have fried eggs, but you're only going to fry one or two at a time. And so the daughters like it this way, the wife likes it that way, the son likes it this way. Eggs cook so fast, you can be a short order cook and still please everybody. I'm just showing here. I just want you to know that the eggs essentially cook the same way, but the pots and the pans and their little nuances to our method of cooking scrambled eggs. Great Britain, their method of scrambling eggs, the French method of scrambling eggs, and I would argue, if we were in person today, we would take some time learning this. There's a difference now between French style, and don't confuse this with a French omelet. French omelet is a specific thing and the finished product of the omelet. French style scrambled eggs, you see, is over double boiler. And so it's cooked over steam, and they are very, very velvety, because it's like a Zabillon sauce, and you're not whipping the egg per se, even though you see there number 9, number 6, 6 and 8 and 9 are all using a whisk. That whisk is breaking up the eggs as you cook them over steam. And in the middle of cooking, see number 7, there's the addition of butter. That's very, very European. I do the same thing when I scramble eggs, always with butter. Don't do it with oil. I mean, you can do it with oil, but butter, unsalted butter, makes them so much richer. I love that. there's just a pretty picture of scrambled eggs. Now, this is another method, and it works best with scrambled eggs. So these are little mason jars, little bitty pint jars or half pint jars, filled with a variety of little product. So maybe you want some potato, and almost like making a whole breakfast scramble or a breakfast bowl. Some of these pictures have some ham and bacon, some diced chicken, there's some diced potato, crack an egg or two in there, but you really want to whip up the egg a little bit in a bowl, pour that in this jar or a coffee mug or a microwave safe bowl, and pop that in the microwave. If you do this, listen to Chef. Chef is wise. Kind of like melting chocolate in the microwave. Set your microwave for about 30 seconds at a time. Because eggs will, the water giving off steam inside, those eggs can explode in the microwave. And now you've got a pretty big mess to clean up. So they'll cook just like chocolate will melt. The first 30 seconds or so doesn't appear that it's doing anything. But I think these, if it's just one egg, with the addition of all of the stuff in the jar, it's going to take a little bit longer to cook, a minute and a half maybe. Chicken scrambled hash brown bowl. I haven't had breakfast yet, so that sounds delicious, Lauren. Are you going to make that for all of us? We'll come over. Fried eggs. The temperature of your pan and the temperature of the oil or grease or fat that you're using is critical. So here we see different stages. And, you know, there's the sunny side up. The sunny side up egg never is never flipped, never turn it. And so that needs to cook slowly, lower temperature. To achieve a sunny side up egg, you need a lower temperature pan. You leave the yolk completely raw, but you want to cook the white all the way through. Over easy or soft fried egg is just gently turned or flipped one time, and you just start to get a little bit of the egg white, the tissue that covers the yolk, cooked just a little bit, all the way to over medium and over hard, and that's the temperature of the yolk doneness. But the darker, look all the way to the right, and all of that brown is burnt egg. And so this is a good frying egg. You have those little bits of bubbles. And some of that is the fat that the egg is being cooked in versus, so look at all of these in different kinds of water and butter and oil and basted. So you have enough fat to baste a fried egg. Basting, as I said before, basting is one technique in frying an egg. And generally the egg stays on one side, and you use the fat and a spoon to baste the top of the egg. And the fat, the heat temperature of the fat cooks the rest of the white on the top and all around. Look at that to the very far right. All of that brown and crispy. You may like it because you're accustomed to it or whatever, but that is not indicative of that. That's a bad fried egg. That's not a good fried egg. We don't want that. Also, professionally, you want to serve all of your, if you go to a restaurant where you're preparing fried eggs, you never want the yolk to break. and develop your skill to the point that even a hard fried egg, you lower the temperature a little bit so that the egg is allowed to cook longer in the pan to completely cook through all of the yolk instead of breaking the yolk. My mama taught me to break the yolk. If I want a hard egg, break the yolk. The very first restaurant I cooked in, I think it was Tuesday morning, every Tuesday morning we had a local club, Lions Club, I think it was. We had a couple in a week. We had a Lions Club. We had a big Rotary Club. Anyway, we did an egg bar, an omelet bar, but not everybody wanted omelets. And I was taught by the chef there, just we don't have time to wait, so break the yolk if somebody wanted a hard fried egg. But in real higher end cuisine, people, that's not what you want to have happen. Very, very amateur. Here's a look at that oil is just way too hot. When the egg hits the pan, you get that brown, crusty underneath all around, and all of the white is bubbly. It's also soaking up a whole lot of grease. Okay, let's talk about boiled eggs. This is a shot. This is a picture, a slide that looks at different cooking methods of different ways to boil an egg. I know one or two of you have an Instapot, and you've been using your Instapot for some of our lab assignments. That's great. Here is what it may look like if you boil hard-boiled eggs in the Instapot. Hard boil in the oven by baking. This one, second from the left on the very bottom, boil and simmer, or the middle on the top, boil and then turn off the heat. Those are the most typical methods of preparing boiled eggs. I'll admit, I never used an Instapot, so I've not done that. And I've never steamed an egg. Maybe something to try. But the whites all cook, you can see, relatively the same. It's the yolk. How powdery, if that makes sense, versus still a little moist, may have to do with the method. Traditional boiled egg. Now, let me tell you what this is. You're going to place a single layer of eggs in a saucepan and cover them about an inch with water. Not an inch of water, but they'll be covered by an inch. So put the eggs. Great question. And in answer to Claire's question, it is actually not the egg white that turns green. It is the yolk itself. And so that, beginning with the outer layer, the longer that egg cooks, the hard-boiled egg, the longer it cooks. If you go beyond this 12-minute, okay, so single layer, covered with water, maybe a little bit of salt, cold water, put the saucepan with the eggs and the water and a little pinch of salt, turn the heat on. From turning the heat on to 4 minutes, you've probably been at a boil for maybe 2. That's the 4-minute egg, 6-minute egg, 8-minute egg, 10-minute, 12-minute. Past that 12, this is also removing that saucepan, eliminating the hot water, and then cold water and ice to shock and immediately cool the egg so they don't continue to cook. If you go to that 12-minute boiled egg and then turn the heat off and allow them to set in that hot water and cool naturally, you're going to get exactly what Claire is referring to here. that ball of egg yolk inside is going to start turning green. There's nothing wrong with the egg. It's just overcooked. That's all. Scrambled eggs held in a hotel pan over a steam table continue to cook. And if they set, a whole breakfast shift and you go back later and try to stir them in, you're going to have some gray and kind of, Sean will relate to this, kind of Vietnam era military drab green. In the bottom, maybe the bottom little inch or so of that pan of scrambled eggs, because they continue to cook. Gets the proteins inside. They like the heat to a certain point, and then they don't after that certain point. Here with these boiled eggs, if you go past the 12 minutes, that's where you're going to see that little green ring around the yolk starting to form. And the longer they cook, the denser, the drier the yolk gets, and that green ring starts to get thicker and thicker. You don't want to see green in the yolk like you want to see that red smoke ring on your brisket. Yes, Abby, eggs are very, very picky. In my house, on my stove, pretty similar to the stovetops at Cami. I find it's very, very consistent. If you put those eggs in the saucepan, cover them with water, a little bit of salt, the salt essentially starts to soften the egg shell while it's boiling, and then when it cools and chills, makes it a little extra brittle and easier to get the shell off. That's what the salt's for. The salt also lowers the boiling point of the water. And so that's helpful for the egg. I go about 7 or 8 minutes in the boiling water, then turn it off, and leave it till I can come back and get to them. It takes 4 or 5 minutes left in that. Once you turn it off, the eggs left in that hot water takes 4 or 5 minutes for that water to cool enough that they no longer cook the eggs. So you're actually still in that hot water a good 11, 12, maybe 13 minutes. And they come out just about perfect every time. Yep. Eggs sometimes are the same color when they come out of the hot box. That's, yep. Those steam, those Cambro type hot boxes where they would hold. It happens in the restaurant as well. Scrambled eggs in a high volume setting, the eggs cook so fast. There is no reason, if you think you're going to be feeding 1,000 people and one hotel pan of eggs will feed 50 people, let's say, there is no reason on the planet to prepare 20 pans of eggs to feed 1,000 people all at one time, because you're not going to serve 1,000 people all at one time. Batch cook, that's the key word here. That's how you ensure very good quality, first customer to last customer. And you're not pulling pans of eggs that are going to be green, just like your FT at your field training exercise. Okay. Just one way that boiled eggs are or have been served in the past. Okay. Different ways of addressing a poached egg. We were able to do a little bit of poaching at Cami, poach some fish. I don't remember right now. Some shrimp. And what else did we poach? I just forgot. Well, some will say you get your poaching liquid ready. You poach eggs just in plain water. You can season the water a little bit. A touch of vinegar, not so much that the eggs take on the taste of vinegar, just a little, a tablespoon or so of vinegar in a whole pan of water. That vinegar will react with the albumin in the egg white, and boom, eventually, almost immediately, you have this little seal. Now, if you spin, and some people will say that's exactly how you do it. You spin the water, create a little vortex in the middle, and right there in the middle, that's where you crack your egg to poach it. And you get this, the egg white really does kind of go all over the place. I much prefer the no fuss method. The water is still. Poaching liquid, doesn't have any movement of the water. And you crack the egg, and just leave it until it's cooked. Poached egg, most traditionally, is going to be used for an eggs Benedict. This ends up being a very poor picture because all you can see is the hollandaise sauce, some chives. You can see the Canadian bacon. You can't see the English muffin underneath very well, but that's all an eggs Benedict is. The secret to a good eggs Benedict is how well the egg is poached and the hollandaise sauce. And I'll leave that for your stock soups and sauces class. Okay, here's this is not a very good picture, especially the cleanliness of the pan and what you're seeing the bottom three pictures. But for the most part, this is omelet 101. And so the top left, you see the mise en place, and then the different stages. Crack the eggs, whip the eggs, eggs go in the pan. This person appears to be almost scrambling the eggs. That's why the pan looks so nasty. I would show you a different method if we were in person, but I crack the eggs, and then very gently with a spatula, I reach underneath and pour off, if you will, just kind of tilt the skillet, tilt the saute pan, and pour off some of the runny egg on the top, and it runs underneath. And I do that all the way around the egg, and then one flip. Yes, the ham is pre-cooked. Ham, by definition, ham that you purchase from the store is pre-cooked, and you can eat it raw. Okay. Now the pork shoulder that becomes ham, obviously you want to cook, and ham is nothing more than that cured pork butt, but it's cured and then smoked. I think this shows. So here you go. This is a picture from a men's cooking how-to journal from like the 1960s or 70s. But I kind of like how this tells us what to do. This is your Sunday brunch in a hotel or resort omelet bar method. And so you start with veggies. If you have cooked sausage, you have cooked bacon, you have cooked ham, your meat options. Maybe you have onions and bell pepper, and if you have salsa, you add that later. Cheese, you add that later. But any of your veggies and meats, you want to go in the pan first. While those are gently sauteing, then crack your eggs in a bowl, mix up your eggs, and then that goes in the saute over the sauteed veggies and meats and whatnot. And maybe something you want to try if you don't know how to do this or never worked with before, and that's that little omelet flip. If I can find a YouTube and find a good one, I'll put it up for showing you how to flip. The video I made, the demo I made, I'll get to in a minute. I did quiche because that's what I wanted to make last week, and so that's what I did. Omelet. There's a look of it's already folded. This is so this method in this slide. All of your veggies and meats, everything but the cheese goes in the saute first, and it's dispersed throughout all of the egg. This method is a French method. Your egg is done, and the vegetables we can see some spinach, some onion, some tomato, some sausage. That is sauteed in a separate pan and then used as a filling when the omelet is folded before it is presented on the plate. Quiche, a baked egg. And it really is, good quiche is really an egg custard. So it's whole egg, egg yolk. There are different methods, a lot of cream. So to one 9-inch, 9 or 10-inch, one 9-inch pie plate with a pie crust. Okay, thanks, Claire. I'll look those up, and if I find something that I really like or trust, and I trust most everything that Alton Brown does, I'll put some omelet videos up for everybody in this week's folder. To a 9-inch pie crust for quiche, I like 4 eggs and 1 cup of heavy cream. That makes a good custard. It's a little bit on the rich side, and I like that. You'll see in the demo that I prepared, it's all ham and bacon. Just show me the pig. I leave out all the onions and the bell peppers and all that kind of stuff. Just I'm a meatitarian. And so anyway, here's just another shot. A quiche in those disposable aluminum pans, aluminum foil pans, about 45-50 minutes at 350 degrees in the oven. That's assuming a raw pie crust. But I would not want to use, spinach, good quiche Lorraine, the onion. I'm not a fan of nutmeg, and a pretty classical traditional topping sprinkle on a quiche Lorraine is nutmeg. You can have it, but I do use La Swiss cheese, which is in quiche Lorraine. So we can call it a quiche I don't know. Lauren, I think that's blackberry and strawberry. But that's just to look pretty on this plate, on this picture, I think. It's certainly don't bake that in the quiche. I don't know if anybody's ever tried, besides maybe apple or pear. I don't know of anybody that's made a quiche that has fruit in it. I think maybe some sausage and some apple could be very interesting. But okay, let's move on to baked eggs. The English term for a baked egg is a shired egg. Now, this particular shot, you can see these eggs, especially the center on the top. The egg looks like it's surrounded by water. And to be fully transparent, water, transparent, get it? Not even a courtesy laugh. Come on, Zachary, you're pretty good with a courtesy laugh. You can give me one of those. There was water put in each. Okay, well, I get one from Doug. Thank you very much. So in each of these. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Each one of these muffin cups was placed water. This is a baked version of poached eggs. And no, people, you can't trust everything that you see on the Pinterest or you can't trust everything that you see in the Google universe. So if you put this in the oven, it is a baked egg. No matter what is all around it, if it's oil, if it's water, if it's cream, it's still a baked egg. And another term, the English term for a baked egg is a shired egg. So just there's a little bit of trivia. If you find yourself playing Jeopardy, there's a double Jeopardy question. Here is a better shot. 1 egg in 1 ramekin, salt and pepper, that's probably coated with some cooking spray, maybe a little butter at the bottom. But that egg is popped in the oven. It's baked in the oven. In the United States, we'll call that a baked egg. In England, they'll call that a shired egg. So if you ever go to England, I don't know, if you ask for a baked egg, they might give you quiche. If you ask for a shired egg, they'll give you this. Claire, that's a good question. I've always done this at 350. I never have looked for some authoritative support for that claim. I don't know that there is a specific right or wrong. What's the best temperature? But just on the rack. Cook it just on the rack. And Lauren, that would be delicious. Cook that just a little film, basically. You can use a basting brush and just paint a little bit of bacon grease inside. You don't want this really, really greasy, or it'll end up frying itself inside the oven. Right on the rack. No steam bath is needed. Personally, I'll just throw out this personal memo, addendum. These are really rubbery, and I'm personally not a fan, but it's worth trying. I mean, they're going to cook in, 4, 5, 6 minutes, depending on how you want the yolk done. Could be 7 or 8 minutes. 1 egg in a ramekin. This is 1 egg, and it looks like just how high up the ramekin. You can never really tell. Photography plays tricks, but that's probably a 4-ounce ramekin. Now, if you use something larger, if you use a little 2-ounce ramekin, 1 egg's going to, almost overflow it. If you go to a 6 or 8-ounce ramekin, this could be 6-ounce. An 8-ounce ramekin, 1 egg is going to be really, really thin in the bottom and may still have a little bit of the yolk sticking up. You don't pop the yolk just as is, but I find this to be really, really rubbery, so I'm personally not a fan. In the Instapot, I just found this last night late and thought I would add this because some of you have Instapot. Maybe you want to do your eggs. You're going to cook eggs as part of your lab this week. Maybe you want to cook your eggs in the Instapot. So some of these obviously are shell on, like boiled eggs. I think I'm not that familiar with Instapot, so let me just leave this slide as it is. And so this is dealing with the degree of doneness of the yolk. And you can see this is the internal temperature as you were. This is not the internal, this is the temperature, I believe, at which the Instapot is set. Are you able to set your Instapot temperature? Okay, so Doug, you're already a step or two ahead of all the rest of the class, because that's the next one we're going to do. You did a sous vide omelet. That's marvelous. Here is like a boiled egg. So you're going to cook the egg, the whole egg, in the sous vide, your sous vide bath, a 1 hour cook at the temperatures that you see below. And so you can see just a little bit of temperature difference. you know, so at 143 degrees, your egg in that water bath for an hour, you have flowing cream. At 145.5 degrees at 1 hour, you're honey thick. At 148 degrees for an hour, you're at mayonnaise thick. Um, Here's some examples in the sous vide. Doug, if you wouldn't mind, just for the benefit of everybody, can you unmute your microphone and maybe describe a little bit so we can all kind of get our hands around what you did? Had you prepared the omelet in advance, or you put a raw egg in, you vacuum sealed egg? What did you do to sous vide an omelet?
What I did was I took the egg, well, 2 or 3 eggs, and I scrambled them up, and then I put them in the bag, and then added whatever anybody wanted in it. And like I said, there, the videos I saw and the cookbook methods I saw told me to put it at 162 degrees, set the sous vide for that. And I did it for about 32 to 33 minutes, which is again what the video said, and they were still somewhat runny. They weren't, like they weren't like I saw on, where you just pour it out of the bag and it's poof an omelet. It was still, an omelet, but it had a lot of runny egg around it.
So there's a little talking point to come from this. Okay, number one, we've shared before. Cooking time in a recipe, even things that you see online, cooking time is relative. Now, you'd think with sous vide, it shouldn't matter. The equipment's not. They may be from different brands, but it's temperature, time, and temperature. 162 degrees is 162 degrees, 162 degrees. But is 30 minutes actually long enough to cook, the amount of egg in the bag? The thickness of your product versus thin in other settings, that may have something to do with it. 162 degrees, I'm absolutely 99% positive that 162 degrees was the recommendation to ensure that you kill any salmonella that may still be present. Remember, we talked about that before. You need to be 160 degrees or more to kill salmonella. 162 degrees, that. I would argue, bath and sous vide. I doubt I fully get that 162 degrees all the way through, down into the middle as well, in just 30 minutes. Sous vide is a long-term, it's a slow cooking method. And so try this if you're willing or you want, and you can report back later if you care to. I would increase that to 45 minutes or an hour. And if we're really being true to sous vide and that cooking method, I would shoot well beyond the minimum cook time to ensure that you cook all the way. But once you reach that temperature, all the way through the product that's in the sous vide, you can hold at that temperature conceivably for hours. Once you reach 162 degrees, you are not cooking that egg any further. Now, we did discuss, if you will remember, when we did the sous vide, you do reach a point where you start breaking down proteins, but that's, if we're holding something for 24 hours or more. So I would try to do that omelet again. And maybe you want to do that for the lab assignment this week, because we're going to cook eggs. A few other things. This is more use of eggs. I'm giving you 4 different desserts here. This is flan, very, very familiar in Latin cuisine. most especially Spanish, Mexican, everything south of the border. Brazilian, that's a very common dessert in Brazil. Me no like, chef no like. This is almost all egg. So what I'm showing you, these next 4 items are varying, I'll call them varying degrees of egg custard. So we have flan, less egg than flan and a little more cream. We have the very classical creme brulee, comes to us from the French people. Even less egg, egg yolk, and much more cream. We have the very Italian panna cotta. And we're coming into that season of ice cream. And you can buy your ice cream from the store, or at the beginning of the season, buy your ice cream freezer. I know, Tara, if you just made the macarons, and I'll make the ice cream, and we'll all get together at Cami and celebrate that we can come back together again, maybe in the summer sometime. Just a few ingredients: milk and cream, or half and half, sugar, egg yolk, and vanilla, either vanilla extract or vanilla bean. That's vanilla ice cream. But handling that egg, making the custard, temperatures, times, very, very important. Souffle, egg, lots of egg, mostly egg. Very, very sensitive to temperature, sensitive to humidity and moisture, sensitive to movement. Souffle can be a toughie. There's a chocolate souffle. We'll just pause class here and stare at the chocolate for a moment. Okay. Part of your lab today and breakfast cookery, this may break most of us out of your comfort zone just a little bit, because making an omelet ought to be just piece cake. Okay. Part of breakfast, certainly in the professional world, includes some kind of breakfast pastry. So I'm giving you a few examples of what I'm talking about. Your lab is going to have 3 parts. I'll get to that in a minute. The pastry you may make could be a pie crust. If you're going to make a quiche, you get your pastry and your egg all in one dish. Okay. Maybe you want to make biscuits. For your lab assignment, if you make biscuits and gravy, that's great. I'm just after the biscuit. Okay. If your final presentation include biscuits, okay, fine. If it includes gravy, that's fine. Maybe you want to make a blueberry muffin, or a strawberry muffin, or a chocolate chip muffin, or a chocolate chip muffin. If you make a chocolate chip muffin, we need to work out delivery to Morrilton, because that needs to be taste tested. Maybe for bonus points. Not really. Maybe you want to make some kind of a quick bread. One of my preferences is a lemon or orange. There's lemon here. This is a lemon bread with glaze topping. This is one of the reasons why I have the diabetes. Chocolate donuts are good. Abby, see you later. Okay. Maybe you just want to make a loaf of white bread, because it's about time to make some bread, and you want some toast with your scrambled eggs. You can make a loaf of bread if you would like. Let's talk just really quick about your lab assignment. Part A, I want you to cook something with egg. More specifically, I want you to cook a breakfast egg. I would prefer, this honor system, I would prefer you cook eggs sometime this week in a method that you are not already generally accustomed. So if you don't usually fry eggs, maybe try frying an egg. If you're intrigued by the shired baked eggs, try shired eggs. If you've never made a quiche, maybe give that a try. And so use the honor system there, but stretch yourself just a little bit. I want one dish, and it doesn't have to be a whole complete breakfast with fruit and milk and chocolate milk and biscuits and gravy and pancakes. Just scramble an egg, fry an egg, poach an egg, bake an egg, make a quiche, do something breakfasty with eggs. You can prepare it with the side items that you like. If you're going to make an omelet and you like bacon and onions and bell pepper and tomatoes, that doesn't matter. But I would like you to stretch yourself just a little bit and prepare eggs in a method that maybe you've never tried before. Okay. Oh, I also would like you to make some kind of breakfast pastry. I gave you some examples there. You can make a quick bread. You can make muffins. If you make a quiche, that's both of these assignments all in one. So for your lab part A, for your lab part A, I'm after a picture, just a close-up of your eggs, mise en place eggs, mise en place pastry. Okay. And for your part B, as we've always done, just a shot of you in your uniform with you holding your finished dish. If you make a quiche, one of the reasons I made a quiche, just as a modeling or as an example, I get it all in one dish. I got the pastry, I have the eggs. There you go, all in one dish. You can do whatever voodoo you want to do, but I'm after eggs and a pastry of some kind. Okay. Let's talk about the practical exam. I will upload today or tomorrow kind of the rubric worksheet, but this is what you see in front of you is basically what so Claire asked an important question about the mise. What I'm going to do is going to be, there'll be part A1 and A2. So A1 will be one of those worksheets where you can put two pictures, or you can do this on your own. A1 will be mise for your eggs and your egg dish, and A2 will be mise for your pastry and your pastry dish, your pastry item. In the event of a quiche, you'll have the mise for your quiche. You'll have separate mise for your pie crust. You may be using the same finished product for both A1 and A2. I hope that makes sense. B, your lab B will be you and that finished quiche, or you and one plate that has your omelet and a muffin, whatever the case may be. And you can be a little creative. You can do some other pastry than the ones that I showed you here. So you want to make your own homemade Pop-Tart? That's a breakfast pastry. Don't open the Pop-Tart, put that on a plate and call that your breakfast pastry. You need to make the pie crust. You need to make filling. So I hope that makes sense. Your final practical exam is going to be one plate. Okay. A protein, vegetable, starch, sauce. Choose from these cooking methods. Okay. So your protein, I don't care what protein you use, but you have the choice of sear, steam, smoke, grill, roast, deep fry, or poach. While we've talked about other things and we've done other things, these are your methods that you have to choose from. For your vegetable, I think you get it. These, while there's others, these are the cooking methods you have to choose from. For your starch, these are the methods you have to choose from. Sauce, I actually don't want to limit you just to those. You can do anything you want with the sauce. We didn't actually cover a slurry. I don't think. A slurry is the cornstarch and water. Okay, common in Asian cuisine, for example. So that can make your sauce kind of glossy and maybe a little gel-like. I want your practical exam plate to also include 3 classical knife cuts from the 23 or 24 knife cuts you learned in Food 1. If I remember right, we only were able to get 1 or 2 knife skills exams in before this pandemic. So I want to see 3 knife cuts, and those knife cuts need to be kind of visible on the plate. So if your vegetable, for example, is sauteed peas and carrots, you can have multiple vegetables. 1 starch, 1 protein, but incorporate 3 knife cuts. If you're going to do peas and carrots, for example, do your own medium dice of carrot. And that should be good knife skills. Okay. Yes, Claire, that's exactly right. Cold slurry, cold water, maybe soy sauce, maybe some vinegar, whatever, but typically cold water mixed with the cornstarch or arrowroot, incorporated into hot liquid. You want that liquid to come all the way to a boil to ensure that that cornstarch is fully active and you're at the viscosity that you want. Mashed potatoes. I'm actually glad you asked that, Sean, because mashed potatoes is not one of your starch options. I guess loosely it would be because you can boil the potatoes, but my thought there is I want to see boiled potatoes if that's what you're gonna choose to do. So actually, I want to see the cuts. So hopefully you'll show me the cuts in the mise, but the 3 cuts also need to be visible on the plate. It's a practical exam, so and from I'm actually giving you now 2 weeks to do all this in. I'll give you more. I would encourage you this week while you do your eggs. While you do your eggs this week, maybe this week is also a planning week for next week's practical exam. I'll explain these things maybe a little more detail and answer a lot more questions, but I don't want to make this difficult, overly difficult, or extra hard, but it is an exam, a practical exam. And so plate presentation, let me give you 2 last little slides as we talk about presentation. So here is a plate. There's some steak, some root vegetables, some asparagus. Notice how full the plate is compared with this. Asparagus, some boiled potatoes. Not sure exactly what the sauce is, if that's Espanol sauce, or there's a lot of tomato if that's an Espanol sauce. Certainly not a demi-glace, but whatever that sauce is, you know, you've got sauce, you've got protein, you've got starch, you have vegetable on the plate. See what I mean by negative space. It draws the eye And so we all may not have white plates, and that's okay. That's fine. I just want to see less is more. This is what you see in the American diner still today. This is what we want to see in high-end plate presentation. Hope that makes sense. Whirlwind of stuff. We went kind of fast. Yeah, avoid the potluck plate. How about? Absolutely, Doug. I'm not going to tell you where those cuts need to be. You know, if you're going to sear a pork chop and you're going to make something with apple and shallot and garlic, you know, maybe your cuts are a paste of the garlic, a mince of the shallot, and a small dice of the apple, and you use that as a topping or a garnish on the pork chop. You know, you've got your three classical cuts all represented right there and visible on the plate. They can all be in the vegetable. Certainly can be. You can have a little bit as a garnish, a little bit. One cut is your vegetable. One cut is your starch. Maybe you're going to do a rice pilaf or a vegetable risotto. In addition to vegetables, there's plenty of opportunity to spread out these cuts. Maybe you're going to do a beurre blanc or some kind of a butter sauce or a wine sauce, and one or two of your cuts are present in the sauce. That's up to you. The rule is 3 classical cuts represented on the plate. That's going to be the rule. So what else? We covered a whole truckload of stuff. Anybody left behind? Do you have any questions to get caught up? If no, just like before, I'm going to hang out for a few minutes. If anybody just wants to chat and vent and unwind, or if you have any other specific type questions you just want to ask,